Now on to reports of apparently rampant grift inside the Trump White House, touching on everything from tech to foreign policy. Among the new revelations, the New York Times reporting that tech billionaire David Sacks, the administration's so-called AI czar, according to a Times analysis of his financial disclosures, Sacks has, quote, 708 tech investments, including at least 449 stakes in companies with ties to artificial intelligence that could be aided directly or indirectly by his policies.
Putin's the invader. He's the dictator. He's murdered all of his opponents. But I just don't see that moral clarity coming from the White House. Russia, if they get a favorable agreement with Ukraine, that alarms me tremendously. I want to see America be the leader of the free world.
Okay, so this is a story about what happens when a president's feuds with his own party become so toxic and so destructive that loyal allies start quitting Congress rather than deal with the constant chaos and humiliation, leaving the House majority on life support and proving that Trump's approach of viciously attacking anyone who displeases him is now actively destroying the political coalition he desperately needs to advance any kind of legislative agenda. Representative Troy Nehls became the latest Trump loyalist to quit Congress on November 29, 2025, following Marjorie Taylor Greene's explosive resignation just 8 days earlier after Trump publicly branded her a ranting lunatic and traitor over her aggressive push for Epstein files. And these back-to-back departures have left Speaker Johnson's GOP majority hanging by the thinnest possible thread, while Trump fumes impotently as his own feuds shred the party unity he needs to govern effectively. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Melissa, good to see you again. Unfortunately, it's not in person like a couple of weeks ago. It was deeply disturbing. I think, frankly, I cannot think of a more chaotic negotiation process.
So it seems as though, and I think others looking from the outside in might think that, this is a situation where key officials may be in a position to profit from these ongoing negotiations with Russia. How does this play with our allies in other parts of the world? Like, what is Europe thinking as they look at this?
Let me walk you through exactly what has happened and why these resignations represent such a devastating and potentially irreversible blow to Republican control of the House and to Trump's ability to advance any kind of legislative agenda during his second term, because understanding the specific dynamics of how Trump's feuds drove these loyal members out of Congress is essential for grasping why the MAGA civil war has reached a point where it is actively imploding the very majority Trump depends on for his political survival. The sequence of events that led to this crisis began when Trump turned viciously on Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of his most vocal and devoted supporters in all of Congress, over her aggressive push to release Jeffrey Epstein files that the administration was handling through Attorney General Pam Bondi in ways that Greene apparently found unsatisfactory. Greene had been demanding faster and more complete release of Epstein-related documents, a position that should have aligned perfectly with Trump's stated commitment to transparency on these sensitive files that the public has been demanding for years. But something about Greene's approach, or her specific demands, or perhaps the timing of her pressure campaign, crossed a line with Trump that triggered his characteristic response of total destruction rather than negotiation or compromise. He called her Marjorie Traitor Greene, a devastating nickname from a president who had previously championed her as one of the greatest MAGA warriors in Congress. He called her a ranting lunatic whose poll numbers were plummeting and who was an embarrassment to the movement. He yanked his endorsement and made abundantly clear she was no longer welcome in his political orbit under any circumstances. Greene's response was to announce her resignation from Congress effective January 5, 2026, a stunning departure that removes one of the most prominent and recognizable MAGA voices from the House, and that she explicitly framed as a statement that loyalty should be a two-way street in politics. This was a direct and unmistakable rebuke of Trump's approach to political relationships, an assertion that he demands absolute and unwavering loyalty from everyone around him, but provides none in return when they become inconvenient, and that eventually even his most devoted supporters realize they are completely disposable the moment they fail to maintain perfect alignment with his shifting and unpredictable demands. Then just 8 days later, Troy Nehls, another reliable Trump loyalist from Texas, who had been a steady supporter throughout Trump's political career, announced he was quitting Congress as well, effective at a date to be determined. Nehls cited family considerations and said he had discussed the decision with his family over Thanksgiving before informing Trump directly, but the timing is absolutely impossible to separate from the Greene drama and the broader chaos that has been engulfing House Republicans for weeks. Whether Nels was directly influenced by watching Green get destroyed and then quit, or whether he simply reached his own independent breaking point at roughly the same moment, the undeniable fact that two Trump allies quit within 8 days of each other signals something very significant about the deteriorating state of MAGA politics. The math of what these resignations mean for Republican control of the House is stark and deeply alarming for anyone who wants to see Republicans advance any kind of conservative agenda during Trump's second term. The GOP currently holds a 219-213 majority, an already razor-thin edge that makes every single vote absolutely critical on any partisan legislation where Democrats are unified in opposition. Green's departure returns the margin to an even more precarious position where Republicans literally cannot afford to lose more than a handful of votes on anything important. With the Nels' resignation piled on top of that, Speaker Johnson faces a situation where his majority is effectively on life support, and where any additional departures or even absences due to illness could flip control of the chamber entirely to Democrats. Trump's public response to Green's resignation revealed his characteristic inability to acknowledge any role whatsoever in creating the problems that now threaten his agenda. He called her departure great news for the country and mocked her supposedly plummeting poll numbers as if her decision to quit was entirely her failure rather than the predictable result of his vicious and public attacks on her. But insiders report genuine and growing fear within Trump world about a cascade of additional quits from members who are exhausted by the constant chaos and who now understand with perfect clarity that their loyalty to Trump provides absolutely no protection when he decides to turn on them for any reason or no reason at all. Alright, so let me walk you through in much more detail how these resignations happen and why they represent such a significant and potentially irreversible turning point in the MAGA civil war that is now actively destroying the House majority. Trump needs to advance his agenda because understanding the specific dynamics of Trump's break with Green and the broader pattern of departures is essential for grasping why insiders are genuinely panicked about the very real possibility of additional quits that could flip the House entirely to Democratic control. Marjorie Taylor Greene's relationship with Trump was once one of the most reliable and visible alliances in all of Republican politics. She was among his earliest and most vocal congressional supporters, defending him through both impeachments with passionate speeches on the House floor, promoting his stolen election claims with absolute conviction, and attacking his enemies with the kind of rhetorical aggression and fearlessness that Trump rewards and appreciates above almost any other quality. She traveled with him to rallies, appeared at his events as a featured speaker, and built her entire political brand and national profile around being the most MAGA member of Congress. If anyone in the entire Republican Party seemed secure in Trump's good graces, it was unquestionably Marjorie Taylor Greene. But something changed dramatically in the fall of 2025 as Greene became increasingly aggressive in demanding release of Jeffrey Epstein files that the administration was handling through Attorney General Pam Bondi. The specifics of what triggered Trump's fury are not entirely clear from available public reporting, but Greene apparently pushed too hard or in ways that Trump found threatening or embarrassing or that conflicted with how he wanted to handle the sensitive Epstein situation. The Epstein files situation has been deeply problematic for the administration, given Bondi's contradictions about what documents actually exist and the court-ordered expedited disclosure that is creating pressure for transparency the administration clearly does not want to provide. Trump's attack on Greene, when it finally came, was devastating, precisely because it used the exact same tactics and the exact same level of viciousness he typically applies to his worst enemies rather than to loyal allies who have merely overstepped. The nickname Marjorie Trader Greene took her name, which she had carefully built over years, into a brand synonymous with MAGA loyalty and twisted it into an accusation of the worst possible betrayal. Calling her a ranting lunatic, dismissed her as emotionally unstable and fundamentally unserious rather than as a committed ally who had simply pushed too hard on one issue. The withdrawal of his endorsement, which had been extremely valuable currency in MAGA politics and Republican primaries, signaled unmistakably that she was now an enemy to be destroyed rather than a friend who had made a correctable mistake. Greene's resignation announcement on November 21, 2025, framed her departure as a matter of principle and self-respect rather than capitulation to Trump's attacks. Her statement that loyalty should be a two-way street directly challenged Trump's fundamental approach to political relationships. His expectation of absolute and unwavering loyalty from everyone around him, combined with his willingness to abandon and destroy anyone the moment they become inconvenient or embarrassing for any reason. This framing turned her exit into a pointed critique of Trump himself rather than simply a personal decision about her career, and it provided a template and a justification for other members who might be seriously considering their own departures from a Congress that has become unbearable. The effective date of January 5, 2026 was strategically chosen to maximize the political impact and the disruption to Republican operations. By remaining in office through early January, Greene ensures that her seat will not be filled until a special election that may not happen for several months. leaving Republicans short-handed during a critical period, including the shutdown deadline and other must-pass legislation. The timing also allows her to continue speaking publicly about her reasons for leaving and about her criticisms of Trump's approach to allies who have done nothing but support him. She is clearly not going quietly into political retirement. She is going loudly and publicly, and in a way designed to cause maximum damage to the president who destroyed her. Troy Nehls' resignation just 8 days later, on November 29, 2025, amplified the sense of crisis exponentially and raised genuine fears among Republican strategists about a cascade effect that could gut the majority entirely. Nehls was not as high profile nationally as Green, but he was a reliable and consistent Trump supporter who had been expected to serve out his term without any drama whatsoever. His announcement cited conversations with his family over Thanksgiving about the importance of spending more time at home with loved ones, a perfectly normal and sympathetic reason for leaving Congress that many members cite when they decide to retire from public service. But the timing made it completely impossible to separate his decision from the broader chaos engulfing House Republicans and from the Green departure specifically. Whether or not Nehls was directly influenced by watching Trump destroy Green and by her subsequent resignation, the fact that he chose this particular moment of maximum crisis to announce his own departure tells you something important about how toxic the environment has become. Even members who remain personally loyal to Trump and who have not been personally attacked may conclude that serving in this Congress under these chaotic conditions is simply not worth the cost to their families and their personal well-being. Nehls informed Trump directly before making his announcement public, a courtesy that suggests he still considers himself loyal to the president even as he leaves Congress. But the fact that he felt the need to leave at all, and that he did so during a moment of maximum crisis for the Republican majority, tells you something significant about the environment Trump has created through his feuds and attacks. Even members who remain personally loyal may conclude that actually serving in Congress alongside Trump's chaos has become unbearable, regardless of their ideological commitment to his agenda. The majority math makes these departures especially dangerous for continued Republican control of the House. The 219-213 margin was already the slimmest functional majority in modern congressional history, requiring near-perfect party unity on any vote where Democrats are unified in opposition. Green's departure returns that margin to an even more precarious state, where literally any additional departures or extended absences could prevent Republicans from passing anything on party line votes. The Nehls resignation compounds the problem significantly by reducing the margin further and raising urgent questions about how many other members might be actively considering similar exits from a Congress that has become dysfunctional. The fear of a cascade of additional resignations is genuine and well-founded based on observable factors that apply to many members of the Republican conference, beyond just Green and Nehls. If Trump will turn on Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of his most devoted and visible supporters who did nothing but support him aggressively for years, then absolutely no one is safe from his attacks, regardless of their history of loyalty. If serving in Congress means being subjected to constant chaos and infighting and potentially being publicly humiliated and destroyed by the president you came to Washington specifically to support, the job becomes much less attractive, regardless of ideological commitment or career ambitions. The connection to the spending bill fight and the Johnson feud amplifies the resignation crisis substantially because it demonstrates that the chaos is not limited to Trump's relationships with individual members, but extends to fundamental questions of governance and party leadership. Trump attacked Johnson publicly and demanded his ouster as Speaker. Johnson defied Trump and passed a bipartisan spending bill anyway over Trump's explicit objections. Republican rebels voted against Trump's position despite his veto threats and demands for loyalty. The party is at open war with itself over basic questions of whether to govern responsibly or to pursue confrontation regardless of consequences, and that exhausting internal war is driving members away regardless of how they feel about Trump personally. The Epstein files connection that triggered the Green break deserves careful attention because it reveals how the various scandals plaguing the administration interconnect and compound each other in ways that create cascading problems. Green was pushing aggressively for transparency on Epstein files. Bondi has been caught in embarrassing contradictions about what files actually exist. Federal courts have ordered expedited disclosure over administration objections. Kash Patel at the FBI is accused of his own document-related misconduct and potential perjury. The administration's handling of sensitive documents across multiple fronts has created vulnerabilities that even MAGA allies can exploit, and Trump's vicious response to Green shows he will attack anyone who creates problems on these sensitive issues regardless of their previous loyalty or service. Okay, so let us break down exactly what these back-to-back resignations mean for Trump and for Republican control of the House, and why the MAGA civil war has reached a point where it is actively destroying the majority Trump needs to advance any part of his legislative agenda. Point number one, Marjorie Taylor Greene, announced her resignation effective January 5, 2026, after Trump publicly branded her Marjorie Trader Greene and called her a ranting lunatic over her aggressive push for Epstein files, demonstrating brutally that even his most devoted and visible supporters are completely disposable when they become inconvenient or embarrassing for any reason. Point number 2. Troy Nehls announced his own resignation just 8 days later on November 29, 2025, citing family considerations after Thanksgiving discussions, but the timing amid the Green drama and broader party chaos makes it impossible to separate his decision from the toxic environment Trump has created through his constant feuds and attacks. Point number 3. The GOP holds a 219-213 majority that was already razor thin, and these departures return it to an even more precarious position, where Republicans can barely afford to lose any votes on partisan legislations, and where any additional departures could flip control of the chamber entirely to Democrats. Point number 4. Green's statement that loyalty should be a two-way street directly challenged Trump's fundamental approach to political relationships. His expectation of absolute loyalty from everyone, combined with his willingness to abandon and destroy anyone who becomes inconvenient. This framing provides a clear template for others considering departure. Point number 5. Trump's public response, calling Greene's departure great news for the country and mocking her poll numbers, reveals his complete inability to acknowledge any role in creating the crisis, but insiders report genuine and growing fear about a cascade of additional quits from exhausted members. Point number 6. The timing amid the spending bill fight and Johnson feud amplifies the crisis dramatically because it demonstrates the chaos extends to fundamental governance questions, not just Trump's relationships with individual members, but the party's basic ability to function as a governing coalition. Point number 7. The Epstein files connection that triggered the Green break reveals how administration scandals interconnect and compound each other with Bondi contradictions and court-ordered disclosures, creating vulnerabilities that even previously loyal MAGA allies exploited before being destroyed. Point number 8. The fear of cascade resignations is well-founded based on observable factors. If Greene is not safe after years of devoted loyalty, then no member is safe, and members with families or outside career options may reasonably conclude continued service is simply not worth the cost of constant chaos and potential humiliation. Point number 9. The implications for 2026 midterms are enormous and potentially catastrophic because every resignation creates special election vulnerability, signals dysfunction that hurts candidate recruitment, and reinforces the narrative that Republicans cannot govern effectively, even with unified control of government. So where does all of this leave Trump? As his feuds drive loyal allies out of Congress and his majority hangs by the thinnest possible thread. The situation is genuinely dangerous for his presidency because he absolutely needs a functioning House majority to advance any legislative agenda whatsoever, and that majority is actively shrinking due to his own conduct and his own inability to maintain relationships with people who have done nothing but support him. Every resignation makes the math harder and the path forward narrower. Every departure signals to remaining members that their loyalty provides absolutely no protection from destruction. Every vicious attack on former allies makes potential defectors more likely to leave rather than less likely. The Green situation is particularly damaging because she was such a visible and prominent symbol of absolute MAGA loyalty. If Trump will publicly humiliate and completely destroy someone who devoted her entire political career and her entire public identity to supporting him, who went further in defending him than almost anyone else in Congress, who sacrificed her reputation and her relationships to be the most aggressive Trump defender in Washington, then what hope does any member have of maintaining his favor long term? The lesson of Green's fall is that Trump's loyalty is completely unreliable and fundamentally illusory, and that any member could be the next target, regardless of their history of devoted support. Nehls' departure compounds the problem significantly because it suggests the exodus is not limited to people Trump has personally attacked and destroyed. Nehls left on his own terms after family discussions, not after being branded a traitor or a lunatic or any of the other insults Trump hurled at Green. This means members may be leaving simply because the overall environment has become intolerable rather than because they have been personally targeted by presidential fury. If the general toxicity and chaos is sufficient to drive out loyal supporters who have not even been attacked, the potential pool of departures is much larger than just people Trump has specifically feuded with. The shutdown deadline of December 20th creates immediate and intense pressure because Republicans need every available vote to navigate the spending fight and now have fewer votes available than they did just 2 weeks ago. Johnson was already struggling desperately to hold his fractious conference together on the spending bill that ultimately passed over Trump's explicit objections and veto threats. With Green gone effective January and Nehls following shortly thereafter, the margin for error has shrunk to nearly zero on any legislation. Any additional departures or even extended absences due to illness or travel could make it literally impossible to pass anything on party line votes. The special elections required to fill these vacant seats create opportunities for Democrats that would not otherwise exist in a normal political environment. Green's Georgia district and L's Texas district are both heavily Republican under normal circumstances, but special elections historically have lower turnout and can produce surprising results when one party is demoralized by chaos and infighting, while the other is energized by the opportunity to capitalize. Democrats will target these seats aggressively as pickup opportunities and as powerful symbols of Republican dysfunction that can be used in messaging and advertising for competitive races elsewhere across the country. The connection to the broader pattern of administration chaos reinforces the damage from these specific resignations exponentially. These departures are not happening in isolation. They are happening amid the Witkoff scandal, showing Trump's envoy coaching Russia on how to manipulate him, the Air Force One meltdown over confused military operations, the Patel perjury allegations at the FBI, the Bondi Epstein files contradictions, the spending bill defeat showing Trump cannot control his own party, and the Fox News pullback showing his media shield is cracking. Each crisis feeds into the others and creates a cumulative sense of an administration and a party in complete freefall that cannot be stopped. Trump's complete inability to acknowledge any responsibility for the chaos he creates is a recurring pattern that makes solutions to these problems essentially impossible. He attacked Green viciously and publicly and then celebrated her departure as if it were entirely her failure rather than the predictable result of his own conduct. He attacked Johnson and demanded his ouster and then watched his spending demands get rejected by his own party. He threatens and attacks constantly and then blames others when the predictable damaging results materialize. This approach may satisfy his ego and his need for dominance in the moment, but it makes building and maintaining functional political coalitions impossible over any extended period of time. The fundamental problem Trump faces is that his political strategy requires both intense, unwavering loyalty from supporters and the willingness to viciously attack anyone who displeases him in any way, and these two requirements eventually and inevitably become incompatible. People who see allies destroyed for minor transgressions or unclear reasons eventually conclude that loyalty is simply not worth the risk of destruction. People who watch the chaos and toxicity unfold day after day eventually decide that other pursuits and other careers are more rewarding and less damaging to their families and their well-being. The MAGA coalition that once seemed absolutely unshakable is now visibly cracking under the weight of Trump's own conduct. That is the story of Trump collapsing as another GOP representative quits after the MAGA civil war implodes his majority, a crisis entirely of his own creation that is destroying the political coalition he desperately needs while demonstrating that his approach to allies and enemies alike produces chaos and abandonment rather than the unity and strength he claims to represent. Drop a comment and let me know what you think about all of this. Was Trump right to attack Green so viciously, or did he destroy an irreplaceable ally over nothing important? How many more resignations can Republicans afford before they lose the House entirely to Democrats? And what does this ongoing chaos mean for any realistic hope of advancing Trump's agenda during his second term? Hit subscribe because this story is developing rapidly and there will be much more to cover as the resignation crisis continues and Republicans desperately try to hold their shrinking majority together through the shutdown fight and into the 2026 midterm elections that could determine control of Congress. See you in the next one.